morning, everybody. I'm Jen Whitmer, and I help teams and leaders solve conflict, cultivate communication, and create empowered teams. And every week I come on and I have a great guest to share with you their expertise, their story, and I'm so excited about David today. I'm a little fangirly, but it's fine. We're going to keep it under control. David is a story architect. He is a strategist. He's a founder. He does amazing work with helping you turn data into great storytelling. I've heard him at a couple different conferences, and I'm so excited that he's here to join us today. We had a conversation about motivation online, and he said he'd come on and talk. So let's welcome David. Hello.
Hey, Jen. It's great to see you.
Yes, I'm so glad that you are here. And if you are joining us in the comments, tell us you're here live and say hello, where you're coming in from. If you're watching the replay, let us know you're watching the replay. Come back. If you've got questions, please drop them in the comments. We're happy to answer them as they come along. So I was telling David, I always like to start with a little bit of personal history. How did you get here? How did you become a story architect and this kind of data story nerd leader? Tell me more.
As a lot of people's stories go, I really ended up falling into it by accident. My background has always been in technology sales and marketing, and I'm a story-driven salesperson. So stories have always been part of my work. But as I got to working in customer insights and market research, and collecting data and figuring out what stories do the data tell, it then kind of merged into how do we start crafting stories from the data? How do we start helping clients tell better stories to grow their businesses? And then I've also gotten involved with a very large TEDx organization, and we craft talks for the stage, and I'm a speaker coach there. So just kind of putting it all together, just a firm believer in the power of story and being able to combine the creative side of it along with the analytics and data side of it.
Yeah. I really appreciate that about your story, is that sometimes we talk about stories and we think of them as these things out in the air, when actually they're really grounded. They're a great way for us to communicate. It's how we're wired to understand. And then when you inform the story with data, it changes how that story gets told and how we absorb it. And it becomes even more true in some ways. And so I just always appreciate that about when you share, that it feels really true. It's not just like, I'm trying to spin this. Like, no, this is grounded and rooted in something that is important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even a cursory understanding of social psychology and behavioral science will help you understand how people process information and make decisions. So, in my world, where it's generally persuasive storytelling, we're telling stories in order to drive some kind of action. The two things that you really have to do is you have to connect with people emotionally, because people make decisions with their hearts, not their heads. And you have to provide clear action. You have to tell people what it is that you want them to do. So often I hear these really well-told stories, but then it stops short of being clear about what to do. And so people are left with, I'm with you. I'm excited. Now what? So if you can put those two things together, and that's generally what I try to focus on, then you have a winning story that can really help drive, hopefully, positive action.
Yeah. And that kind of brings me to our discussion. So this was a month or two ago on LinkedIn, and you were talking about having all of these ideas. Like, I have idea after idea after idea. And that is also like my kryptonite, is 1,000 ideas. And then can't somebody else just make this happen because of the motivation state. So I'd just love to talk to you a little bit about, when you think about motivation in your life, where is it helpful and where does it fall short?
It's a good question. I am definitely an idea person like you, way more ideas than I can possibly execute. And of course, in my mind, they're all brilliant.
Of course they
Without
are.
question, they're all what I have learned as I've matured and grown in my career, and maybe through raising kids and running my own business now for more than a decade, is that motivation is fleeting, and motivation is not something you can rely on.
Yeah.
Right? Like, motivation is the most beautiful sandcastle, and as soon as you apply even the slightest bit of pressure to it, it just crumbles back to where it came from. So the antidote to that, the other side of that, is discipline. And discipline is the counterpoint to motivation. Where motivation wanes, discipline can remain a constant. Discipline is what you do, motivation is what you want to do.
Yeah.
And life is full of things that we don't want to do, or we just don't want to do today, right? I love creating content online, and yet sometimes I'm sitting down to write it and I'm like, I just don't want to do this today, but it's got to go out tomorrow, so I'm going to do it today. And so for me, that's really that's the switch that kind of flipped and allowed me to really pick and choose what I'm going to work on, and ask myself, am I going to have the discipline to see this through when the shiny part rubs off, or when the motivation starts to dip, or when somebody kicks over my sandcastle?
Because there's all kinds of different ways. The shine wears off just because some new shiny thing catches our attention. Well, at least I should say my attention. And then there's also the naysayers and the people who do kick down your sandcastle outside of your own ability to run it over. And I love what you said, that discipline is what we want, or motivation is what we want to do, and discipline is what we actually do. I think that's a really important counterpoint. And when I'm thinking about somebody leading a team, a lot of times I'll get speaking requests come in and like, I want you to motivate our team. And I'm always kind of asking, well, what do you really want? Are you wanting them to be inspired? Are you wanting them to be equipped? What are you asking for? We talk about motivation because you said motivation is fleeting.
Right.
So when you're thinking about motivating your team, because that's a really common, I just want to motivate my team. How do you incorporate motivating your team and this word that, I mean, even though I understand and deeply value motivation or discipline, it also it's like a little, I don't love discipline.
Yes.
How do you marry those as a leader?
Oh, that's a good question. So yes, motivation it's temporary and it ebbs and flows, right? So for me as a leader, my team has to know that they're appreciated and valued and supported all the time. I can't possibly keep them motivated all the time, because I can't keep myself motivated all the time. So all I can do is make sure that the building blocks are in place so that they feel respected and supported and taken care of, and that they have the tools they need to do their job. And when I have the opportunity to motivate, I take that opportunity, and it's genuine and it's authentic. In a perfect world, that comes back to me too. I get a lot of my fuel from the team being excited about what they're working on, and then they can lift me up a little bit when I'm struggling by saying, yeah, we are doing these really cool things, and maybe things are going better than as a leader I think they are, because I'm often down in the weeds of it. But it's also just deciding, once we make decisions on what we're going to do, that's when the discipline, or maybe we come up with a nicer word for it that people will like better, because then we have to do what we say we're going to do. We have to execute. So it's really that it's that whole process for me.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I think that just drawing people's attention to the fact that motivation is going to ebb and flow, like that expectation of reality helps us deal with the reality better. And I always like to, because I do chafe at the word discipline, even though I do appreciate it and have it. I like the word consistency a lot. Like, consistency implies that there's some change and variable in that, at least for me as an Enneagram 7 who doesn't like to be restricted. I like the consistency idea. It helps me get my head around, oh, that doesn't mean it's exactly the same every day, but I am consistently showing up to get toward that thing that I wanted. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
motivation is what I want to do. And so
Mm-hmm.
consistently helps me walk toward that thing that I actually want in the
Mm-hmm.
end.
Yeah,
So
and consistency is it's a nicer word, has a better connotation. So as storytellers, I appreciate that. And in this conversation, it has the right connotation, because where motivation will ebb and flow, consistency will hold steady, and it
mhm,
won't it won't struggle against the unpredictability of motivation. And the
mhm,
other kind of biological side of it, which I think is what I mentioned in that original LinkedIn post, is that there's also biology and chemistry at play here, where just the notion of coming up with an idea that you're excited about will give you that dopamine hit that we all
mhm,
subconsciously react to all day, every day. And that's why we all get so excited by ideas. And we'll spend
mhm.
an entire weekend plotting exactly how we're going to hit this thing Monday morning, and it's going to be perfect. And then Monday morning, you couldn't have less interest in doing it because you've already gotten the hit. And so
Mhm.
you're good. Like, I dreamt about this, I thought about it, I feel awesome now. I don't actually have to do it. You don't say that consciously, but that's the way the body reacts. And so that's also, we're fighting biology.
Yes. And I think one of the ways that I have found in my life and when I'm working with clients to help overcome that, and even when I was an educator, is when something is over, I tend to be like, that was great, and kind of move on. But
Mhm.
actually, when I stop and ponder, what did we accomplish? And we really say, what was the win about this? I don't know if it's the dopamine that comes back, like brain chemistry wise, but it definitely starts to wire me toward finishing is just as exciting as the first idea. Like
Mhm.
it builds, it's a discipline actually. It does build that muscle in me and in teams that when we finish something, oh, that feels really good too. I had a consulting client and they just had this crazy schedule that would start in December and end the first week of March. And it was just event after event after event. There were 2 board meetings. There was a huge, huge trade show in the middle of that. And so this was just this storm of activity. And in the beginning of it, everybody was like, yeah, we're going to do that. And come like
Mhm.
February 1st, we're like, oh my God. Everybody's, their motivation is failing. And it
Right.
was that reminder of, remember, we're in the middle of the storm. But last year when we did this, this is how we felt at the end. And here's what we
Yeah.
accomplished. So what are we
Mhm.
accomplishing this year? And I find that discipline of building that storytelling, that self storytelling, is
Right.
really powerful in when that motivation dips. I don't know. How do you handle that?
I agree. I mean, the stories that we tell ourselves are really the most important ones, because they're the ones that keep us going every day. And the metaphor of a storm is very accurate, because it starts off very mild. Sometimes it even starts off beautiful, right? Then you get into the
Mm-hmm.
eye of it, and you would do anything to escape it. But if you can just stick it out, yes, the feeling of completing something, I would argue, is even more exciting than the feeling of starting, because you also have that accomplishment. You can look back and see what you've done. So that's where you do need to have that consistency. You also have to have a team around you. So
Mm-hmm.
many more of us now are also working isolated, working from home. Maybe many of us were used to being in an office around other people, so we don't have that in-person
That
collaboration,
physical
that
feeling. Yeah.
buzz. And so a lot of us are in uncharted territories as well, on how to keep ourselves motivated and keep ourselves moving forward consistently. And more than ever, it requires surrounding yourself with people, even if it's doing it virtually, because maybe it's the only option some of us have now.
Yeah, yeah. That's a really key point, that we relied on certain things in the office together that I think we just took for granted, that energy buzz of being together,
Mhm.
of seeing those accomplishments. And even, not on this topic, but just culture transfer, like the things that get picked up in an office that are much more challenging in a purely virtual or hybrid environment, and how we cope with that. And that takes a lot of energy to then replace. It takes a lot more intention to replace. So that's a really important point about how we think about our team in that way. Like, oh, this used to be easier. Well, yeah, because it actually was easier. Like that embodied presence made it easier. Right. So I'm curious if someone's like, oh, I've got my team and I feel like I'm in this place where we need motivation and we need discipline. Where do you start? Like, as a leader, if you're facing that, what would you suggest? If you've been in that situation before, where do you start with your people?
If it were me, I would bring the team together as a whole. Now, speaking on behalf of myself, I have a small company, so I have a relatively small team. I'm sure there are some people listening who work for huge companies, but they might be leading a team. So in a perfect world, I would bring that team together, and it can be virtually. And I would do that check-in and really understand how is everybody feeling about things right now? Are we feeling connected and motivated? Are we feeling disconnected and unmotivated? And why? And what can we do to support each other? Not in a rah-rah, this is a one-time meeting, I'm going to send you some branded swag and we're all super excited. In a very practical, pragmatic way of what can we do to support each other, lift each other up, provide that motivation for each other day to day, so that we can kind of all rise together. But being siloed, is just really, really hard. And not everybody went from office to virtual. I actually did. So I can speak to it firsthand, where we, our small team worked in an office together in person every single day. And we're now completely virtual, because even when we could have gone back, nobody wanted to. And we realized we were just as productive. Now, I do think some things are lost, but also some other things are gained. So we just made the strategic decision, we're going to do it that way. But we've really had to then change our style to not have everybody just alone on the, all day long, all the time.
Yeah. There's so much research about connection at work. Like, even just having one friend at work changes your well-being and how you feel about that. And then when you add that layer of not just a friend at work, but your leader and your team feels connected in purpose of what you're doing, and somebody cares about how that's functioning, that immediately makes you go, okay, I belong, I feel cared for. And then that makes us more productive, and that starts to build that motivation again.
Yeah. And if you ever read any of like the longevity studies or the happiness studies, over years and years and years of time, what always bubbles up as one of the most important are relationships. And those who are happier over time are those that have even a small number of close relationships versus loneliness. So that's, of course, on the personal side of things, but I think that equally relates to work as well.
Absolutely. I was unfortunately at a funeral this weekend, but it was this unbelievably moving funeral. I actually only had met the man who died once. I'm friends with his daughter. And watching this man who lived a very purpose-filled life of work, like he had plenty of outside work relationships, but he, in his work, had built such a legacy. And watching that play out in his daughter, who is my friend, and his grandson, who is my son's friend, and just thinking about the purpose, it got me excited for my own purpose in work, and watching his legacy and the legacy we leave when we connect with people in a way that is meaningful, that is purposeful, and honoring the fact that we're human, like that we do get this dopamine hit from planning something exciting, and knowing that as humans, we have to connect and figure out when that's not happening, what do we do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't be too hard on ourselves either. The fact that we are human, and just allow that to be.
Yeah.
And, we don't have time for the whole rabbit hole conversation of also what are the astronomical odds that we would never even be. And the very fact that we are is something to be celebrated and appreciated. But That's a whole nother tangent.
I know we could talk forever, and as Shelby's saying, like people leave jobs, because they made friends, like that friendship. And when you can have a leader, encouraging you who are leaders to listen, when you gather your team and you really listen to them, that is a part of connecting in relationships. And if people feel heard, that fight or flight goes down and people start to really connect. And oh my goodness, we could talk about this for forever. And I just want to keep talking, but we have to end. And I'm so sad.
It goes so fast.
I know, it always goes so quickly. I would love for you to just share with the people where they can find you, what you talk about. I love following you on LinkedIn, but tell the people where they can find you and what you do.
Oh, thanks. I think LinkedIn is the best place. Everything converges there. So if we're not connected, follow whatever you like to do, please do. I ebb and flow with how active I am despite my best intentions, but I do give it a good, honest try, and really try to stay focused on the topic of storytelling, persuasive communications, but definitely some leadership in there. I'm by no means a leadership expert. I just have my own personal experience.
Yeah, but your personal experience can teach us, and I appreciate that. So
thank you.
Thank you so much. All roads lead back to LinkedIn. Yes, Shelby, they often do. I mean, that's how I met you, Shelby. So thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate your time. If you are new, I am here every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Next week, Gary Ware is coming on, and we're going to be talking about fun at work and how that is actually productive. And I'm really excited about that conversation as well. So join us next week. David, thank you again for being here.
My pleasure. I'm going to tune in to learn about fun at work too.
It'll be fantastic.
Awesome. I'll be there.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. Hopefully you can grab some extra sleep from daylight savings time as we all try to recover a little. And we'll see you later. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.